Hello again, everyone. It's Mr. Most Days Off, and I am back again for part 2 of the Best Darn Diddly Review Show interview with Mathew Klickstein, the author of Slimed, an oral history of the golden age of Nickelodeon. We talked about the episodes Bart Gets an F and Simpson and Delilah last week, and it went a little bit long, so we decided to cut this into 2 parts for you, and we are going to jump right back into our conversation with Mathew Klickstein.
In both these episodes, there's a moment of prayer, whether it's Homer saying, "Dear God, please give a bald guy a break," or it's Bart, praying, directly for the snow day. I kind of forgot that the show was a little bit more religious back in the day. I'm like so many people, I haven't really kept up on the series, but from what I recall, just in like sort of the mid seasons that I sort of stopped at, that didn't really come up as often. And, it was kind of wild to see not one, but both episodes that we watched had a moment of prayer in it. And particularly for me, because another little personal side that's sort of fun, I grew up in Rick Warren country, purpose-driven life, born-again Christian, etc. I myself am Jewish, though not religious, but, whenever I would sleep over at a friend's house, I'd always have to go to Sunday school with them, because I'd sleep over, Saturday night, and then I'd go with them Sunday morning to Sunday school, because, my mom was
it's part of the deal. I remember having friends like that, too.
Yeah. But I will never forget, at one point, and I had no idea what they were talking about, because I couldn't think in this way, but one of my friends, like Sunday school teacher or whatever, he did the thing where he explained that Bart Simpson's the devil, and that the devil's in the TV, and when you watch, Bart and the Simpsons, you're watching the devil, and he just made all these points. I honestly had no idea what he was talking about. I was probably 6 or 7, just that was so outside of my purview that I couldn't understand what he meant by that. I was like, no, he's not. He's Bart Simpson. He's not the devil. What do you mean by that? I was not seeing the metaphorical connection that he was making. So I think it's funny that, I very specifically and on a personal level remember when The Simpsons was beyond naughty. It was blasphemous. It was diabolical. And yet here the show was had prayer in it, So I think that's just kind of a funny little aside,
Absolutely. There was actually another thing I saw. To your point, there was churches that had burns. They were basically you should bring all of anything that you have or your kids have that's Simpsons related. You should bring it up, and we'll do this bonfire. And it seems like churches do this every couple of years with something. I know when I was in high school, Eminem CDs, were the popular thing to have to. Yeah, Marilyn Manson before Eminem. You're absolutely right. Yeah. So there's always something. But at one point, The Simpsons was so naughty, if you will, that churches were calling for bonfires of the a la Krusty the Clown when he was framed.
Yeah. No, that's fun. And it's always happening. My fiance and I, we just separately, but then we kind of came back together to talk about it because she was still back with her mom in Illinois. Until recently, and we're moving and everything, and we both watched 8 Days a Week, the documentary about the Beatles, and obviously that happened with that too. When John got caught, saying, "Oh, we're bigger than Jesus" or whatever it is, and all the burnings that were happening with the Beatles, and and the Beatles albums and the like, and it really is a shame when that kind of thing happens. And I remember when it happened even with South Park. Just the very idea that Kenny would die in every episode was offensive to many, and so I think that that's a shame. And anything with that kind of censorship or where you're burning something, especially as someone who's, frankly, I hate to play the Jew card, but I'm gonna, somebody who it's
God damn it, Kyle.
Yeah, exactly. Stupid Jew. But no, it's look, that was a part of my grandparents, one of whom is still alive, or actually 2 of whom still alive, their reality of books getting burned and such by the Nazis and the like. And so no matter when that kind of stuff happens, whether it's from the left or from the right or whatever it is, I take it really personally, and it really upsets me. It's a shame that happened at one point, but it is funny and I think proof positive of, now The Simpsons is as establishment as it gets. I'm sure Miles and maybe you too, Richie, might have seen, but now these episodes of The Simpsons are actually shown at churches. It's like here's how to here's some lessons on prayer and that kind of thing. So and we see this throughout history, whether it's Mark Twain or whatever it is, where it's like different times treat the material in different ways. And that's why I think it's like, don't burn it, please. Like, you might not like it now, but like 20 years from now, this might be something you're teaching in your classes. So,
there's universities that teach classes based off of The Simpsons. There's words from The Simpsons that have been added into the official English dictionary. So you're exactly right. I mean, if you burn all the material, how are you going to improve yourself at all?
We're fortunate that we live in the technology age that we do, but it's in particularly tragic when you talk about these things where it's like we don't have other copies we don't have a PDF file of that book that once it's gone forever, or it was written by, you actually burn the original script that was written by, whoever, and it's things of that nature where it's just like those are irreplaceable, people. Like you can't do that, even just from a historical standpoint. But I mean, that goes into the whole history is written by those who win type of thing.
Right.
And that is to some extent, they're trying to, make it revisionist history, and that's them doing it in the moment. And yeah, you're totally right. It's very sad. But overall, Bart got a D. I think we all agree that episode gets an A because it's one of the best episodes of The Simpsons. On IMDb, it's quoted as being the highest rated in season 2. And it's even made several Entertainment Weekly lists of various types, just, being it best TV moments, best TV episodes, things of that nature. Entertainment Weekly does a lot of those, but it consistently pops up on those lists, which I think is absolutely justified. Fortunately for us, the second episode of the season, Simpson and Delilah, which debuted on March 18th, 1990, may not be quite as good as Bart Gets an F, but it's still a hell of a good episode. A really, really entertaining one, and one that I remember fondly as a kid. This one opens up. It has the chalk gag, tar is not a plaything, and we get the couch gag where the Simpsons do a little line dance. We open up this episode with the Simpsons watching television. I believe it was a Jeopardy-style show. There's speaking of your Jewish ancestry, sir, there's a moment where they bring up a question, the capital of North Dakota named after this dictator, and Homer says Hitler, North Dakota.
To which,
they bring up that Bart is actually somehow losing to Homer, but he changes his strategy and starts copying Patty and Selma to get the correct answers.
Yeah, I really love the evolution of Patty and Selma as time goes by as well. In fact, is it just me or they kind of make it clear that both are quite heterosexual, which is something we know changes a little later down the road when Homer comes in with his hair and it's like, quit drooling. No, you're drooling and so forth. So I think it's interesting again the way that they sort of padded out the characters a little bit more as time went by. But this is back when they couldn't quite do that kind of thing quite yet.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because we'll go ahead and just jump ahead on this episode like crazy. We'll circle back around, but at some point we meet a character named Carl who is Homer's assistant when he becomes a executive. Carl is voiced by Harvey Fierstein, who I only knew prior to this or other than this from the movie actually Mrs. Doubtfire with Robin Williams.
Of course.
It's the uncle who owns the salon that helps Robin Williams transition into Mrs. Doubtfire. He plays Carl in this episode, and it seems pretty apparent that Carl is openly gay, but actually Matt Groening, as just kind of, I guess, a way of deflecting, anytime it was brought up, he would only answer, he is whatever you want him to be. But in later times, it's been made pretty clear that he was, in fact, a homosexual character, and believe it or not, Simpsons did it. The first animated male-male kiss occurred between Carl and Homer on this episode a good 10 years before a real-life male-male homosexual kiss occurred on Dawson's Creek. So, again, just always amazed that no matter what side is it, be it politics or social issues or just comedy or anything, it always seems like The Simpsons did it first.
Yeah.
Jeez, get with the times, Dawson.
Yeah. Well, and there's that little moment I in some of the reading I did on this, where also, he pats Homer on the butt, and I mean, I guess that's taken a little far because obviously in sports and whatnot that happens a lot and that kind of thing. But I don't know if you saw, but I was surprised that Firestein said that originally they were going to make the character of Carl look like him, and he felt that he wasn't a stereotypical-looking homosexual, so to speak. So he was the one who suggested they make him look, the way he did ultimately. And so, I think that there definitely are some hints like that, especially when we look back on it later on in these interviews and the like, where we realize that it's pretty possible Carl was actually gay, and I agree with you. I think that these are the kinds of things that come out of satire, that come out of parody, that come out of cartoon, and it doesn't surprise me that they showed the first, male-to-male kiss, 10 years before it would happen in live-action television, because obviously you can kind of get away, quote-unquote, with things in cartoons that you can't necessarily do in a live-action show. And I remember at the time, it didn't seem that weird, I don't remember any real ruckus about it, and even celebration, really, like, hey, look, they finally showed this. Because it was a cartoon and people weren't really paying attention to that kind of aspect of it or really cared, so to speak, So, I think that's one of the glorious aspects of not just The Simpsons, but cartoons overall. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, I guess you can kind of say the same thing in old Bugs Bunny cartoons.
I was just going to bring that up. He cross-dresses and kisses guys all the time, and you don't think twice about it because it's a cartoon for children.
Right.
What's funny about both of those is I remember watching this episode, and for that matter Bugs Bunny, with my father, and I love my father and he's a really good dude, but it's not that he means to be, but he's totally like passively homophobic, if that makes sense. Like he will never say, like, he would never ever want to, like, hurt anybody or like even really he doesn't have ill will, but he was raised ignorantly when it comes to homosexuals, and he just doesn't, he thinks it's wrong. But even him, who would, make comments if there was like a gay couple in a movie. I remember watching this episode of The Simpsons with him, and it never came off as weird. He was never, like, my dad was never like even grumbling about it like he might. I'm gonna tell a really funny story with my dad at Christmas with my wife, trying to correct himself from a political correctness standpoint. My wife has an uncle who's gay, and my dad knew this, and it was one of our first Christmases with my wife and my parents at the same house, and my dad was saying something, and he was talking about a guy he knew at work, and he's telling a story, and he's like, yeah, this fag I know at work, and he stops himself, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I mean queer. And he thought he saved it. Like, he was like, oh, I'm totally good, I made the save. And like, Emily and I just are dying laughing, because again, this is just kind of to show that my father means well, but just is completely ignorant of what is, acceptable in 2016 society. And in his mind, oh yeah, queer is totally the acceptable term.
No, that, I mean, obviously, and that of course links back to the episode of Simpsons with John Waters in it, where he's like,
oh, I love that episode.
And he's fumbling on the exact same thing. Queer, you want to be called queer, right? And he goes, well, actually, John, but
yeah.
And have to throw it in there just because it literally just happened.
I think that might actually be one of my favorite episodes.
Oh yeah, no, that episode is fantastic. But I have to say, it's a funny coincidence because my fiance is in the room with us right now. She's just kind of napping a little bit on the bed over there, but. And she's actually never seen any of his films before, so I'm because we just moved to Baltimore, and apparently I didn't realize.
Nice.
I knew Waters was around here. Apparently he lives literally like up the street from where we moved to, and I first heard a friend locally, a guy I work with, saw him at the dry cleaners. Well, been here 2 months, and he was at our restaurant a couple nights ago, and so and I actually saw him. Host a screening of they're doing a restoration of Multiple Maniacs, literally the only film of his I'd never seen before. So I got to see him talk, and he showed his film, and I got to ask some questions of him. And then a couple weeks later, here he is in our restaurant, and totally side railing here, but I think that the line about the fumbling over how to say what to call him, and then he says, well, you call me John. I think is really funny. And just yet again, just the way that The Simpsons is able to work with some pretty heady material, and that's, years later and still be pretty edgy, but, ultimately, respectful enough where, they're not doing something that's going to, incite violence or totally offend people or whatever it is. Like, they can have fun with it. And I think that that's really, the significance of things like cartoons and satire and parody. And, yet again, another element of why we all like The Simpsons so much is they're able to stay topical and have some fun with it and remind us, to laugh about some of this stuff.
Absolutely, and that's what a lot of it comes down to. Richie and I both refer to it as kind of like the South Park approach to life, but neither of us have like hate in our heart towards anyone, but we also don't like to censor ourselves in terms of jokes. Like we feel the best policy, the best medicine, as you will, is make fun of everything, make fun of everyone.
It's either all okay or none of it's okay.
Exactly. As soon as you say something isn't okay, well, that makes none of it okay. That makes it all offensive. But as long as everything is on the table, then nothing's specifically derogatory towards anyone or anything, and it's all for the sake of moving, because I mean, like, there's some really terrible shit that's happened in history. I mean, like, there's the Black Lives Matter movement right now is huge, and clearly some really shitty fucking things happen to black people in our country, and shockingly not that long ago is the thing. Is like when you really look at the history of it, it's not like, a lot of people will be like, well, there haven't been slaves for hundreds of years. Well, first of all, that's not quite true, and second of all, like, yeah, they may not have been slaves, but like then, like in the 60s even, like we're talking 50 fucking years ago.
No, or even now. I mean, even still, it goes on now, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's so many groups that are still oppressed and dealt with, and just all these different discrepancies with pay and whatnot with women and the like. And no, I agree with you, and I think that though there is still an element of needing to be able to laugh at it and to have fun with it. And my fiance and I are the same way. We say, everyone should be able to do whatever they want, and that includes making fun of everybody else. And I'm definitely an advocate for that. I worked for the ACLU when I was in high school and college, even though I didn't necessarily then or now agree with everything that they stood for. They're a pretty broad organization. But the one thing I was really adamant about with them and still am is absolute freedom of speech. And, I think that that's so important, and it's why I do so appreciate, Simpsons, but and certainly right now, I think, really killing it in such an important way. I'm so glad they're doing what they're doing is, South Park the last couple seasons. I mean, I think that they're really one of the only, beacons of truth in a lot of ways, just because not only are they making great points, but they're able to be so funny about it, and they're able to make such, really, really, incisive comments about what's going on right now in society, and in a way that's still funny, and that's still unifying. I mean, and it's hard to pin those guys down. Are they Republican? Are they Democrat? Do they care? Because they're making fun of everything. They don't take sides. Yeah. And I think that that's great.
Yeah, it's honestly hard to tell. Even I get the feeling like they probably at the end of the day are going to vote for Hillary based on the comedy coming out right now. But at the same time, they're doing such a good job of making fun of both Trump and Hillary equally. That honestly, that for all I know, they're not even going to vote. I mean, really,
right?
Because at the end of the day, it really does come down to a douche and a turd sandwich in most elections, regardless of There's not that many people that are going to passionately argue against that, especially this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But and again, I think that's the joy, and I certainly experienced this with Nickelodeon of nostalgia, and certainly and this has come up a lot. There were things that were a lot worse back in the 80s and 90s for a lot of people, and there was a lot that needed to change, and it's been changing over the last few years, for the most part, which is good. But I think that the nostalgia that we have about that time in the 80s and 90s with shows like Simpsons and certainly what I was analyzing and exploring with Nickelodeon, it's great to look back on and to enjoy it and to have that connection. And I've traveled around the country. I've lived in a lot of different places all over the country, and both Nickelodeon and Simpsons alike. I've met so many different people, different ages, different races, religions, philosophies, levels of education, different kinds of jobs, whatever it is. And, there's an element that you can really connect with. And I think it even goes back to what you said about the Wonder Years. Yeah, that show took place in the 60s and 70s, and yet people who were growing up in the 80s and 90s like we, were able to still connect with it because there was a universal quality there. And, I think that that's really important. I'm glad that we're able to look at that. So when I see an older episode of The Simpsons, like Simpsons and Delilah, yeah, it might not be necessarily as funny as some of the later episodes. It's certainly no South Park circa now as far as comedy is concerned, maybe. But, it's still some really funny moments, some really good storytelling, and it definitely brings you back to that time when, you were 7, 8 years old, and I don't know about you, but, maybe it was the last episode of television you got to watch for the night, and okay, it's over, it's time to go to sleep. Just there's so many memories that flood in when I think about, like an episode like Simpsons and Delilah that, I just don't have with some of these later episodes that might be a little funnier, might be a little bit better, might be animated better, whatever it is. But when you watch something like Simpson and Delilah, I just have really special memories of where I was at that time, what I was going through as a kid, and that kind of thing. And it's nice to know that you guys were going through that too, and that other people, guys, girls, whatever it is, different people around the country, even world, were, we at one point we were all watching the same thing, experiencing something similar, and laughing. And I think that's not to sound too schmaltzy, that's pretty damn beautiful itself.
Oh, no, that's absolutely beautiful, man. I dig it. And I think what I was going to say, I think a word that sums up a lot of what you were just saying is heart.
Yeah.
The Simpsons has so much heart that even on episodes that aren't necessarily as funny, like you mentioned, it still connects. Like, man, for an animated family that's, like, yellow and weird looking and not really even, they're humanoid more than they are, like, human figure, and still you emotionally connect with all of these characters in a really, really strong way. And really, this episode's a really simple one. While they're watching TV, Homer sees the stereotypical ad for a hair growth program that's the new miracle cure. And he obviously falls for it hook, line, and sinker, only surprisingly, after a little bit of insurance trickery, filling out the forms a little bit funny, he's able to acquire this $1,000 miracle hair growth formula, and it actually works.
And don't get us started on the healthcare. We could do a whole other podcast about that.
So this Homer Simpson, for the first time in 20 years, has beautiful, luscious, flowing hair. He's running through the town, screaming about his hair and good morning. There's a really great moment where he runs into another man with a head full of luscious hair, and they're both like, Demoxicil, and they're like, yes, good morning, and they hug and they run off.
It was the It's a Wonderful Life moment.
I also like the return of the old crotchety couple on the front porch that we see in the early seasons, and in this case, the old man. Yeah, the suicide couple. This case, the old man yells at Homer to go get a haircut, which is fucking brilliant, of course.
I like when he said hi to the funeral participants.
Right, and they're all happy too.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, that was great. Good little touches, those little flourishes that make The Simpsons so great even back then.
Absolutely. So along with his new hair, he's also reassigned a new life. He has 3 minutes to say goodbye to his friends back on the floor of the power plant, and he's moving on to be an executive because in traditional Burns fashion, he did not recognize Simpson. He asked who that young, vibrant young man is, and against his, best wishes, Smithers was reluctantly told him it's Homer Simpson, and they moved him up to take the one required union promotion that they have to give each year.
Oh, no. They said one token promotion that they have to give.
Yeah, that's right. It's token. Yeah, I love that. They actually say it.
Token lives do matter.
Right. I really enjoy that premise itself, and that, you give it and you take it, as soon as he loses the hair, as we know at the end, spoiler alert, now he's actually giving a pretty good speech about self-management and something that can save the plant millions of dollars, but no one wants to listen because he doesn't have hair. And just the superficiality of society as a whole, I think is an interesting point that they're making here throughout. And they're having some fun with it because obviously Homer shouldn't be working this job and is a moron. Unlike Bart, I think Homer really is an idiot. But having the hair is something that makes people at least want to listen to him, whether it's Burns or whomever it might be. So, I think that was a fun kind of formula that they had of, he's got hair, so now he's important. Without the hair, he's not. So,
well, to be fair, Homer is not an idiot. He is actually a genius. He just has a crayon shoved in his
Oh, right. Of course.
So, hereditarily speaking, Bart and Homer are both geniuses then, I guess.
That makes sense. I mean, Lisa is traditionally a genius, and as we've discussed, we think Bart has his own genius in his own special little way. Margie even often refers to him as her special little guy, which I think is accurate in more than just the mom loving way.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I wanted to say, when Homer gets up to go to his new office or his new job and everything, he opens the door to leave for work. And I always have issues with the Simpsons on this part, is every time they open a door coming in or going, they never really have the floor plan of the home being the same, because Homer opens the door to leave, but if you look outside, it looked like the backyard to me. It didn't look like the front door, and they've done this once or twice before, and they do it a couple times in later seasons with the bedroom door for Marge and Homer, but it looks like he was leaving to go outside in the backyard.
You always catch these. I honestly never do. I guess it just doesn't bother me as much, but I think that it's just still early enough that they haven't necessarily established the layout of the house entirely yet. Maybe I don't know though. Again, you always catch those on every episode.
They miss a little bit in the last episode. Bart, when he passed the test, his mouth started saying "woo" before Krabappel said that he passed. Like, he started going "woo" before she passed, and then the sound came in. So that every once in a while, it's still early on where it's going to happen, where they're just off by just a few microseconds.
Interesting.
Yeah, I actually, to bring it back to Nickelodeon and Slimed again, I can't even remember now what's actually in the book and what's not. But I do remember that Jim Jenkins and everyone at Doug made a really big point about how incredibly meticulous they were about making sure that all of the buildings and houses and school and so forth in the world of Doug, Nickelodeon's Doug, was just completely drawn out. They had blueprints. I mean, people just across the board were telling me they've never before, during, or since. And some of these people went on to work on, Beavis and Butthead, King of the Hill, Shrek, other big shows and movies and like that. And, they all said they never saw a Bible, show Bible like what was there for Doug. I mean, just Jim and his team, they really laid it all out. So, clearly for some people it's really important. Others, I'm sure later down the road Simpsons figured it out. But, in these early days, they probably just were happy to have a show at all that was running,
Yeah.
That makes me both love Nickelodeon's Doug more and hate Disney's Doug more at the same time. It really does.
You would not be alone there. I mean, one of the great coups of the book and my interviews with everyone is, I think every single person I talked to from Doug not only did not like the Disney version as much as the Doug version. In fact, some of them outright just disliked the Disney version, but they were all happy to admit it to me. It was almost like they were waiting to finally tell somebody.
Yeah, thank God someone asked. Finally,
exactly.
There's actually a really heated point of conversation in my household, because my wife grew up in Germany, and she's not a Nick kid. I don't know how I ended up finding one and marrying her, but I don't hold it against her. She's a swell lady. But she never saw Nickelodeon's Doug, never once.
Wow.
She only was exposed to Disney's Doug. So when I was reading your book and I was discussing it with her and talking, and I still watch old Nickelodeon shows. I have a bunch of DVDs, and there's also a website that streams all of the old stuff, even with commercials, which is really dope.
Nice.
But I was talking one day about how shitty the Disney Doug is, and she's like, "What do you mean the Disney Doug?" She had no concept of this, and I explained to her that there was this good version of Doug and the shitty version of Doug, and she was mortified and pissed at me because she loved Doug when she was a kid, but she only ever saw the Disney version. So I'm basically just taking a giant shit on her childhood memories.
Wow. Well, now.
That's crazy to think of.
Did she start screaming and cussing at you in German? That's how it happens in my head.
9! So that's my Disney Doug rant, but it is what it is. So this episode, as we already got to, Homer becomes an executive, and one of the best parts of this entire episode is the character Carl, who is essentially the most badass assistant that one could ever get.
He's a hype man, and he's really good at it.
He's really good. There's a great moment where Homer's interviewing assistant candidates. He tells the lady that her resume looks in order, and then she tells Homer about her exceptional back rubbing skills to haired executives. he gets a phone call from Marge, who's quite uncomfortable with this, and when Carl comes in and talks about how he could be his assistant, Marge is instantly like, yeah, hire him. He sounds good. He sounds good. Hire him is what she says. So Carl becomes Homer's assistant, and it becomes very clear that Carl is really fucking awesome.
He's overqualified for sure.
He's really overqualified. He takes care of everything. I mean, everything from like building Homer's confidence as an executive. He immediately calls him out, saying that he doesn't belong here, to which Homer almost has a breakdown, but then Carl immediately builds him right back up and gives him a foundation of confidence. Even things like Homer forgets Marge's birthday or it was their anniversary. Yeah, and Carl arranges for a singer to come and sing "You Are So Beautiful to Me." Things like that. And one of the best scenes, too, is Carl's taking Homer shopping. And Homer is getting measured for a suit, and Carl's like, no, Mr. Simpson, you need to let it all hang out, at which point Homer relaxes and his waist expands about 6 inches. And then he yells at the tailor, you, conceal it.
Yeah.
For me, the metaphor of the character is the final scene he's in, where he says, did you bring an umbrella, Mr. Simpson? He's like, no, and he goes, here, and tosses it to him. He does that like a cool guy look where it's raining on him. To me, that's the perfect metaphor for Carl.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he literally walks away coughing, you know? I mean, it's like or he sneezes or whatever it is. It's like they really, hit the nail over the head. Like, they really hit it home, that it's like Carl will just do anything for Homer. And I thought that was really cute and clever, the way that they did that, for sure.
And I can't remember after all these years, but I'm pretty sure you never see Carl again, like even in the background anywhere.
I read that they actually did want to bring him back in the episode when Homer moves in with a group of gay guys years later, and they wanted to actually bring the character back, or at least
a long time after. Wow.
But Firestein actually said he felt that from the interview, it wasn't that he was necessarily offended or anything, but he just felt that though the jokes were funny, he didn't feel it had like the Simpsons twist to it that he would have liked, so he actually turned it down. So it wasn't really clear in the interview I read with him when I was doing research for this whether or not it was going to be Carl again, but they definitely wanted to bring him back. And he has a very unique voice. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, but it's funny because Mike Reiss again, he wrote a cartoon movie called Queer Duck, which is pretty funny. That another friend of ours, Zeth Xeth Feinberg, and gotta plug him because he's great. He does a lot of his own cartoons on YouTube and the like and different things like that. So Xeth Feinberg, but Zeth directed and Mike Reiss wrote it. It's called Queer Duck. And it's a pretty funny thing. It was actually part of something called Icebox back in the day that you might remember. That was sort of an early precursor to YouTube. Back when people still had like dial-up modems and such, so it didn't really work very well, and it was a bit of a mess. And in fact, I actually asked both Zeth and Mike this, and they were very honest about it. In fact, they've talked about in other interviews. But the episode when Bart has his own little like animated show on a kind of an early YouTube, and the whole thing falls apart with Angry Dad, was totally making fun of their experience with that. It actually was directly, because that's what Mike basically, that's actually what Mike went through. But how this all wraps up with Firestein is I used to mix up the movie with another show that was on, I think Showtime or something. They did kind of like these sort of like politically correct or like politically modern, whatever you want to put it, like fairy tales and whatnot. And one of them was with Firestein as like a gay duck, like it was like Ugly Duckling, but he was like gay or something like that. And I just, for some reason, I remember having watched it when I was younger, and Firestein was the voice of. So for some reason, I connected with that character, connected with the voice from that, but also, of course, from Carl. Then, like probably everyone else from our generation as the gay uncle in Mrs. Doubtfire. So he has kind of his ubiquitous aspect, and again, a lot of it's that voice of his. It's pretty.
Yeah, it's a really, really specific voice. I mean, as soon as you hear it, you instantly identify it.
Yeah, it almost is like Ursula from a Little Mermaid, but a little, but not quite as mean.
Nice, yeah, totally. So Carl helps Homer become a successful executive with suggestions such as more tartar sauce for the fish stick day, and also helps him write a pretty killer speech, as Matthew alluded to earlier. Unfortunately, Smithers is getting a bit jealous of Homer's connection with Mr. Burns, things like getting to dry Mr. Burns' hands once he enters the executive bathroom. And Smithers does a little bit of snooping into Homer's file. He figures out that Homer cheated the insurance form to get his hair care product, and he brings down the hammer on Homer. Simultaneously, we have a scene back at the Simpsons home where Bart is fantasizing about having a dope hipster beard, so he decides to use his dad's hair growth stuff to make that happen. He ends up dropping it, and in a scene that really frustrated me, but it goes back to Homer not being so smart, the bottle is actively sitting on its side, pouring out into the carpet, and instead of picking it up and saving whatever is left in a $1,000 bottle, anything you save is going to be a decent chunk of change. So the fact that he just let it pour it out so he could go and choke Bart really frustrated me. I feel like he should have grabbed the bottle and then choked Bart, but that is what it is.
I don't think that would work for his character. If he was a responsible person and went over and picked up the bottle, he would have subsided his anger a little bit, and he might not have strangled Bart, which you have to strangle Bart. That's just part of the show.
That's part of the gimmick. You're right.
And I love that he says that, "I love you, Dad," while he's being strangled. That could have been his last breath saying that while he passes out.
And isn't it like Homer's like, that's a cheap shot boy or something like that?
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Well, and to be honest too, if we were gonna do the realistic thing, Homer clearly has an impulse problem. So I could see him maybe ditching the bottle just to go attack Bart. That's what his impulse would send her to do. So I think that actually was still. I get what you're saying, and I when I rewatched the episode, I felt the same way. Like, oh man, grab the bottle. But I don't think his mind was on the bottle. His mind was on killing Bart.
Yep. I'm
just a cheapskate, I guess, because my first instinct was like, that like literally draining like $50 a second or whatever it is pouring out there. So I don't know. Maybe I've got a little bit of Jewish.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm the Jewish one. Come on, what's going on here? You're co-opting my neuroses here.
There you go. Homer ends up having to do a speech without his hair and without his confidence, but somehow, someway, super assistant Carl, even though he's been fired, by taking the blame for Homer on the insurance fraud, shows up for Homer's big speech. He has prepared it for him. He's even spelled out the big words phonetically so that he could read them. But unfortunately, without his hair, nobody respects him. In fact, there's some really funny comments of like, why would we listen to a bald man? The nerve of this guy, and things of that nature, which is really funny when you think about the fact that Burns himself is in fact bald, as we'll discuss here in a bit. But the speech, while actually seemingly might be one of the most intelligent things Homer's actually ever gotten out in a correct fashion, is not landing in any way, shape, or form, and by the end of it, it's very clear that his time as an executive is over. He's called into Burns' office, where his job is only saved due to the fact that in a rare moment, Mr. Burns shows sympathy, because as a young lad, he was known for his strawberry blonde locks, and he too knows the sting of male pattern baldness.
Dun, dun, dun. They also reveal that in that moment that Mr. Burns is like 83 or something like that.
81.
81.
Yeah.
Yes.
Instead of the.
How old do you think I am, Simpson? 102?
That does change whenever they do the episode "Who Shot Mr. Burns." Apparently, I read that as well. I didn't see what the discrepancy was, but apparently there is an age discrepancy we're not 100% sure how old Mr. Burns really is. But for the sake of this episode, he's 81.
Wow.
Well, he does a lot of radiation treatment where his mind gets a little loopy, so, he might just forget his own age every now and then.
That's true. Radiation-induced dementia.
I bring you peace.
Nice.
What I liked in the earlier scene when Smithers was giving Mr. Burns all the information on Homer frauding the insurance company, when Burns was all high on Homer, Smithers points out that accidents have gone down to the exact percentage they were at before Homer started his previous job.
and the productivity rate was the same as Homer's last vacation.
The productivity rate is the exact same that it is every time Homer takes a vacation.
Yeah, that was really good. And lastly, we discussed it a little bit earlier too, but the male kiss actually scene was really kind of heartfelt because they're kind of getting in. Homer and Carl are getting into somewhat of a heated conversation where Homer's really down in the dumps. He doesn't have his hair. He's completely lost his confidence. He thinks he's a fool. Carl's like, "You're no fool, Homer. How can you prove it? Because my mother taught me never to kiss a fool." And that's when they actually have their kiss. There's a funny moment when Homer's like, "Carl." We get that ass slap that Matthew alluded to, and it really did motivate Homer to go out there and really do his best, but as we mentioned, it fails. Back to the heart of this episode, Homer is back in bed with Marge. He's basically depressed about the fact that he's lost everything. He can't provide the things he promised his kids. He's no longer able to give Marge the nicer lifestyle they've been able to have the last few weeks. And he's honestly worried that Marge thinks he's ugly and doesn't love him anymore. And in a beautiful moment, Marge sings the same song that was sung to her earlier, "You Are So Beautiful to Me." That was not only a nice callback, but also just a genuinely really sweet moment between Homer and Marge. And one of those things that I think even definitely as an adult now, as a married guy now in particular, but even as a kid, I remember this would just give you that warm and fuzzy feeling.
Definitely.
Yep.
Anytime Marge would sing like that, or was being precious with Homer at all because of her voice, she had this gravelly voice, it was always quite touching, because it was almost like she was, you almost felt that she was afraid to let that out because her voice was rather unique and a little grating in a way. In fact, there's that episode when she records herself with that strange toy that Homer gets Bart, the
basically like a talk boy.
Yeah.
Is
that what I sound like? So I think she's a little inhibited about her voice, and so when she lets it out and sings or says these really sweet things or whatnot, I think that it's particularly touching. She really wants to. It's sort of like what you were saying before about Bart. Once he's actually honest with himself, he actually is pretty smart. So too with Marge, or when she actually lets her voice out, it's actually, she's not going to win any contests. And I know this because my fiance, we all are bad at karaoke. She is spectacularly bad at karaoke. I mean, it's impressive. It's its own talent. It really is. You've never seen or heard anything like it before.
It's like it crosses the line twice, so to speak.
What's that?
It's like it crosses the line twice, so it's so bad, but then it becomes so bad that it comes back around.
Yeah, exactly. That's
fantastic.
She's loving that she's featured in this podcast here.
Shout out to Becky.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Matthew, is there anything else that you want to talk about for this episode? Anything that we haven't touched on yet?
Not really. You know what? I agree with you. I think that, it's a fun episode, some good moments. Carl's a great character. The I love you, Dad is really funny and smart, but not as much going on here as the previous episode. And, but before I say this, it actually works really well. I had a film teacher once who said something I always really respected and appreciate, and I'll actually use this term. He meant the other Homer, the Odyssey Homer, but he would say whenever that would come up, like, a lesser film of a really great filmmaker, he'd say, well, even Homer sleeps. And so I say with this one, you know what? Even Homer sleeps.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah, right. So it's like, look, it's hard to go from an episode like Bart gets an F to something, like the very next episode. I know they kind of did. They created them a little out of order, but not every episode can be Bart gets an F. And it's still like what I was saying before. You put on any episode of The Simpsons, you'll be able to watch it and enjoy yourself. And so too with Simpson and Delilah. It's certainly not one of the worst episodes, but it's a little flat. There's not as much going on. Let's be honest with ourselves. Carl's a funny character and an interesting one, but it's like, where the hell did he come from? Like, what was that? There was no development at all.
Nobody would be that dedicated to a boo.
It is a bit. you know, and
that's what makes it so sweet.
Yeah, and it is, and I got that, but it's like, I don't know, it almost seemed like it was an episode where they just kind of threw some stuff together at the end of the day, and it still works, and funny moments and whatnot, and memorable for sure. In fact, I think Firestein and the character are listed on many top 10 lists as far as, you know, top guest stars on The Simpsons. But yeah, it's I think one of the minor episodes, so to speak. One of the ones that, you know, it's just not as much to talk about. You know, we spoke for like over an hour on Bart Gets an F, and you know, here we are half an hour into Simpson and Delilah, and I don't know how much else we have to say.
Yeah, it's just not as deep. You're totally right there. You're totally right there. Richie, was there anything from you or that fancy little book of yours that you'd like to point out for Simpson and Delilah?
Well, from my lovely The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, I did point out that Homer is reading a Play Dude magazine in Jake's unisex hair palace. So I thought that was kind of...
Is he really? I didn't notice that at all.
I read it after I watched the episode, and I was like, I don't remember that at all, but I wish I would have noticed that, because that's pretty funny, actually. For me, though, I'm going to take what I usually do, where I find the thinnest thread of something, and I'm gonna just form it all together for you. The character Carl was a metaphor for the entire episode. Just like Homer's hair, he appeared out of nowhere, and just like Homer's hair, he disappeared to nowhere.
What do you think about that?
Man, dude, those waters run deep over there, WizKid.
The last point about this one of the lines that Smithers had actually kind of bothered me a little bit in this one, because he said it with so much evilness in him, is when he was talking to Homer in one scene, and he said, "You're not gonna hang yourself, are ya?" And he said it like so, it was so evil the way he said it.
Super dark, yeah.
I was like, wow, I don't know if he'd actually be able to get away saying that in this day and age anymore. But back in 1990, it's no big deal. It's just like the suicide talk we had in one of the first episodes. Like something 10, 15, 20 years ago that makes people laugh. Nowadays, it's like, whoa, that was kind of misplaced.
Yeah, it definitely is. Again, I think that we've become a little bit more sensitive as a culture in a lot of ways, and
absolutely,
you know, and sometimes that's okay, and sometimes I think it's overkill, and I think in a lot of these jokes it's overkill, because you're right. These jokes are funny, and they're not meant to be hateful. Obviously, they're not meant to be hurtful. And the fact that it's like, well, you can't joke about suicide because somebody I know killed themselves. And it's just like, well, somebody I know has cancer, but I still make cancer jokes. And I have friends that are black and Jewish, but I still make black and Jewish jokes. It goes back to that
you're an
South
asshole
Park
and you make asshole jokes.
And I make asshole jokes all the time. Yeah, you're totally right. So it just all goes back to, I mean, it's, you know, you can have a country where you have freedom of speech, but you can't also have a country where you have the right to not be offended by things, and that's what a lot of this comes down to. But that's for a whole deeper podcast, and I'm really proud of a show like The Simpsons back all the way in 1990 for pushing boundaries that were, because I mean, to be fair, going the other direction, in 1990 it was a lot less acceptable to be a homosexual than it is in 2016. Not that that's right, but that's just simply the way it was. There's a lot more backlash towards that. I mean, and there wasn't a right to get married or even have a domestic partnership or any of that stuff. So, I mean, in that regard, society's come a long way. But I think that humor can be used to open those doors. And if nothing else, if you make a joke about something, people can laugh, and then they can break it down and think like, oh, but why do we laugh at that? And what is wrong with that? And oh man, that really is not right. Like, we should really have discussion about that. And it opens doors to conversations that need to be had.
Well, the thing about the Simpsons too is like they weren't proudly standing up and waving their arms saying, "Hey, look what we did." It's just they never even, like you said, Matt Groening never said this character is actually gay for the longest time. So it wasn't even a deal to them. It's just something they put into the episode, and it flowed with the episode, and they didn't point it out. They added the little touches here and there, like they do with Smithers throughout the years, but they didn't have to rub your nose in it, which makes it better.
Absolutely, yeah. The not rubbing your nose in it aspect is absolutely correct, because then I think kind of like we talked about a few episodes ago, where there are times when we watch The Simpsons and it's like, son of a bitch, I learned something on this episode. I wasn't trying to learn, I was trying to watch a cartoon. And to the same extent, it's like, son of a bitch, I'm becoming more culturally aware because I'm watching a cartoon, and it's not being forced. But like the story about my dad earlier, I mean, a show like this kind of sneaks in the idea of like, oh, okay, he's just a gay guy. It doesn't make him a weird guy or like a bad guy. He's just a guy. The fact that this silly little cartoon can do that, again, just massive props. But anyway, I think we've talked enough about The Simpsons for one day. However, I do want to give some time to Matthew because I know that he's got a lot of really cool stuff coming up. So, Matthew, what you got going on, brother? Share your world with us.
I will indeed. Thank you. I don't know how many people would still be listening at this point in the podcast, but for those,
probably like half of the dozens that we started with.
For those few hangers on. They'll definitely get a fun little treat here. Of course, I'm just going to say it again. It's part of the job. If you liked anything I had to say and you're interested in Nickelodeon in particular, please check out Slimed, An Oral History of Nickelodeon's Golden Age. I always like to say, if you can get it at your local bookstore, especially if it's an independent bookstore, I always like to promote that. Frankly, I think it's a better version than the Kindle version for a number of reasons. Just the kind of format it is, and read a book. Get an actual book. I think that's good, and support your local bookstore. But if you can't, do it through Amazon or whatever you can. That'd be great. And of course, I am doing the Mark Summers documentary. We're really excited about that. We've been working on it now, developing it for about 2 years, working on it for about 1. We have a team of people all over the country working as I speak in Texas, in Portland, in Boulder, in New Jersey, New York, all over the country, Florida, really connected over our love of Mark Summers and Nickelodeon. And you want to talk about crowdsourcing. This is the real crowdsourcing from back in the day when people would actually get together and meet over their loves of whatever it was they were doing and made this all happen. And very proud of how that worked out. It's called On Your Mark, M-A-R-C, like Mark Summers' name. You can find out more about it at marksummersmovie.com. Again, M-A-R-C. And we actually have some really cool guests in it. I got to meet some really amazing people. Neil Patrick Harris. We have Seth Green.
Awesome.
Yeah, Neil was great. And there's actually a really direct connection. It turns out he and Mark are both big enthusiasts in the magic world. And at one point they were actually going to do a TV show together about magic. But it didn't work out. Neil famously said, I've always wanted to give Broadway a try. And the rest is history there. So we got Ryan Seacrest, though, who sees Mark as a kind of mentor, and talked a little bit about that. We got Guy Fieri, of course, a big Food Network star. Wow. And Mark, helped to kind of develop Food Network the way that he helped to develop Nickelodeon. And we're pretty excited. Should actually have a rough cut of it ready by the end of the week, we're hoping. And so you'll
awesome.
Probably see it out there one way or the other sometime early next year. We were kind of hoping to try to get it ready by the 30th anniversary Double Dare, but that's come and gone. And we literally got some of these interviews I'm talking about last minute, and we actually moved some things around. Originally, we were going to be done with this thing in August. Then Nickelodeon said, "Hey, we're going to do the Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con thing with Mark and Nickelodeon and Double Dare." And we said, "Oh, I guess we're going to have to keep shooting this thing." So it kind of changed our schedule a little bit, and it just would have been impossible to have something ready by October 6th. But it'll be soon, and I think people are really going to enjoy it. I think they're going to be surprised too. It's not, much like Slimed itself, it's not just a nostalgic kitsch thing for people who are really into Double Dare or Mark Summers. I think there's a real story there. I think even people who might not know who Mark Summers is, they might not care. They might not have watched him on Food Network either. I think you could still watch and just enjoy it as a real story. Mark's life is pretty amazing, and he's overcome a lot of challenges. He's dealt with a lot even in the last few years of his life. Car accident, getting over cancer, all of his, obviously infamous stuff about OCD and whatnot. And, we're really proud to be a part of this project. So that's coming out On Your Mark. Miles, you and I were going back and forth about this. I will say, I don't want to get into it too specific because it's still really early on, but I guess you guys will have the honor of being the first media to have me talk about it at all. I am starting to develop a new book. It does deal... I don't want to say it's about The Simpsons per se, but there's an aspect of it that deals with The Simpsons, and there'll certainly be a little bit of it in there if it works out. But I'm pretty excited about it. There's still some talks that need to happen, some flaming hoops I got to jump through, but definitely anyone listening still, hopefully we'll be able to check that out in probably the next year or two if it comes together. And we're still just finding it out, but it's looking good. Feeling good about it and kind of excited, and there'll definitely be a fair amount about The Simpsons in there if it works out. So we'll see how that comes along. So yeah, otherwise, just always still picking out other little projects. People can read what I have to say about some different things at the website for Baltimore Jewish Times, which is what I write for now. It's a print magazine as well. But it's online also, jewishtimes.com. And I actually have something coming out about the 30th anniversary of License to Ill, the Beastie Boys album, Three Nice Jewish Boys. Yeah, coming out this Friday. I'm actually pretty happy with how that came together, actually. So, you'd be surprised what I get to do through the Baltimore Jewish Times. Not all just bar mitzvahs and the like. Sometimes they let me do fun stuff like that. So, yeah.
Well, it sounds like it. That's dope, brother. That's really cool. I truly am very, very excited when I read about On Your Mark. I'm one of the many people that huge Mark Summers fan, not only from Double Dare and What Would You Do, but I also really enjoyed his show on the Food Network. And
sure.
he's just one of those guys that I had such a strong connection to as a child that I still just view him as definitely not father figure. That's not even close to the right word, but just somebody I look up to a lot. And like, he was an adult as a child that treated me through the magic of television as a human being for like the first time. And there's very clearly, even in your book, some of the words that he spoke and some of the interviews you had with him, where he talks about how it's just like, yeah, we would just treat kids like people, and this was their network, and we weren't dumbing stuff down because they're kids, because kids are smarter than most people give them credit for, and things like that. I think that really reflects in his personality. Also, truly amazing that cat was like 30-something when he started on Nickelodeon, and I know he even jokes about how he was constantly skewed as younger 20s. Just, I guess, good for him with that, with his genetics or whatnot.
Yeah. No, I think that'll all come through in the documentary, and again, I'm not just proud of the film that we have so many different people around the country working so hard at it, and I feel like it's even the filmmaking itself is sort of an underdog story. We don't really have too many connections to all these big blogs and things like that, so you're not really seeing too much about it right now. And even Mark himself is for a certain audience, people are really into him, but he's not someone like a Neil Patrick Harris, if you will, or whatever it is. He kind of does have sort of a smaller audience and that kind of thing. And, none of us have a lot of money. We've all been just kind of doing this the best that we can, picking at it when we've had an opportunity. Everyone's got day jobs. And, so I feel very proud that even on the filmmaking level that, it's Mark's is an underdog story of a sort, and the filmmaking has been something of an underdog story. And I think that when it comes out, people are going to be very surprised to hear the fuller, more complicated story of Mark Summers, but also I'm looking forward to kind of telling people that, hey, you can make a movie too. And, even beyond things like Kickstarter or Indiegogo or the like, if you have a group of friends who really know what they're doing, they're smart, they're hard workers, they're able to put aside some time and, take a step away from the family or their day job here or there and just make those sacrifices, staying up late at night, working on the weekends, whatever it is, you can make this happen. And I'm very proud of that also. Because, I think that that's still a real issue here. There's a lot going on now with diversity and inclusivity in film and television, which is great, but I think there's still something being missed as far as class, which doesn't really get talked about as much. And I have a feeling you guys are probably in the same boat as I, where, people who don't have a lot of money, people who didn't come up with a lot of money, and I was raised by a single mom who was a dental hygienist who barely was able to pay the bills. I'm really proud that, a lot of the other guys working on it are the same kind of boat where, we've made our own little lives and such. We don't have a lot, but what we have, we've put into making this documentary on our own. And it looks good. It sounds good. It's a real, feature film. And, it's not just going to look like some kind of YouTube movie or something like that, or something that like some student film, So I can't wait to get out and say, hey, if you like this movie, you like this story, just, know that you can do that too. You put some real time and effort into it, and anyone can make a movie like this. You don't have to just be a rich kid or son or daughter of celebrities or whatever it is. And that's something that is making me really proud about this project as well. Just seeing it come together, and that we're able to compete with people whose last names you'd recognize, is making me really, really happy. And so I just can't wait. And, it all comes down to Mark has been so supportive. He's been really helpful. And he's a great guy. He really is. I'm happy to get to make a movie about a man who's been so helpful to so many people. And he's not paying me to say this. I think people are going to be very surprised when they learn the kind of person Mark really is. Beyond just the TV show, and that frankly all those things you said about him, connecting with him as sort of an avuncular figure in your life, is actually merited. He really is like that. When we hang out with him and talk with him, you just want to hear everything he has to say. Even without the cameras on.
That's awesome, man. I'm super happy not only to hear that Mark Summers is just a super cool guy, because that makes me happy on a personal level, but also that you've had such good success and have found a crew of people willing to bunker down and take on this task with you and kind of take this hill together, because I know I can't be the only one out there that's super excited for this project. So good for you, man. Good for you. Richie, is there anything that you want to plug this week, my friend?
Yes, I would like to say to all the single ladies out there, if you cannot afford to go buy Slimed, I am borrowing Mr. Most Days Off's copy right now, so you can hit me up on Twitter at @thewiz_kid23, and I'll let you come over and read it with me.
Nice. There you go.
You can also catch us every week on Mr. Most Days Off's YouTube channel. Please subscribe to him, where we have our weekly movie review show called Movies in a Half Shell. So make sure you watch
Turtle Power.
Yeah,
movie power.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think I'm good.
Awesome, man. Well, I am Mr. Most Days Off. That works on Twitter, that works on YouTube, that works on Twitch. I would like to, as always, say a very special thank you to Steve the Fan at The Fans Podcast for putting us on his network, and also Mathew Klickstein. Brother, I am so happy that you came on the show, man. This was a great conversation. I hope you had as much fun chatting about The Simpsons as I did. And I hope you'll come back in the future, man. If you ever have anything that you want to talk about, you're welcome on the show. Or, again, if there's any episodes that have any special meaning toward you, or you just feel like chatting The Simpsons with us, brother, give me a shout, and we would love to have you back again in the future. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And thank you too, Richie. Appreciate it.
This is very fun. It's good getting all this insight, and I look forward to seeing this movie.
Great.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. We will be back next week for another episode of the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. We'll be covering the inaugural Treehouse of Horror, and 2 cars in every garage, and 3 eyes on every fish. As you can tell, we're starting out with a stacked couple of episodes for the second season. It's going to be a fun ride, and we can't wait for you to come along with us. See you next week.